The latest from the Trump circus is that Donald Trump is planning on having a big discussion with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is nominated to be Trump's Secretary of Health and Human Services, about do we really want to continue the child vaccination program that has been active in the United States for a very long time. And of course, the guy that's going to have a say in this with Trump is Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the same RFK Jr. who once sat at dinner with me and ate a baked potato with his hand. I've never seen anyone do this, but more substantively, the same RFK Jr. who spent years pushing debunked vaccine conspiracies, including that there's a connection between vaccines and autism, one of the most studied and debunked claims out there. And he is going to have a say about whether we keep or end the childhood vaccination program, which would, of course, toss out decades, nearly centuries of science-based public health policy on a whim. Trump's reasoning is he thinks we need to see the numbers on this autism thing. We have a quote here. This is again from Donald Trump's written interview with Time magazine. Don't worry, Trump didn't do the writing. He talked, and what was published was transcribed. Trump was asked during this interview, I just want to ask you a quick question about RFK Jr., who is a noted vaccine skeptic. If he moves to end childhood vaccination programs, would you sign off on that? Trump's answer, not exactly a profile in courage. Trump says, we're going to have a big discussion. The autism rate is at a level that nobody ever believed possible. If you look at things that are happening, there's something causing it. Now, we have talked about the supposedly growing rate of autism so many times. A huge chunk of it is we're better at diagnosing. A huge chunk of it is there are now systems in place where I know it's sort of crude, but when I was in elementary school, there were kids who, in retrospect, I now realize were on the autism spectrum. At the time, it was just sort of like, we don't really understand why this kid behaves this way. It's, quote, weird. They were often ostracized or alienated. We didn't have a system in place to recognize and say, hey, this is the path that we should explore, and it leads to a diagnosis. So that's part of it. It also may indeed be the case that the rate of autism is growing up, and we're exploring reasons why that may be. Some people say microplastics, others say environmental and pollution. On average, parental age being older. All these things might be factors, but we know we have libraries of studies about vaccination and autism, and there is no link. And remember that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the guy who is going to be running, if he can get confirmed, Health and Human Services, the agency in charge of vaccine guidelines. It's like handing a flat earther the job of running NASA. I mean, it's absurd. Experts are, of course, sounding the alarm. No vaccines would mean more measles, more disease, more death. But Trump's all about, we're going to have a discussion as if this is just harmless dinner table debate about, should we have pie or chocolate babka for dessert? But this is life and death, and the science has really been settled since the 90s. We have multiple phases of clinical trials for vaccines before they are licensed. The trials start with small groups of people, phase 1. You assess basic safety. You expand it to thousands in phases 2 and 3. You look at safety, dosage, efficacy, and even after the vaccine is approved, it's monitored extensively for safety and efficacy. These systems detect rare side effects that may not appear in clinical trials. The common side effects of vaccines are injection site pain, depending on the type of vaccine, sometimes a sort of flu-like reaction of sorts. Serious side effects are rare. All of the autism vaccine stuff goes back to the late 90s when Dr. Andrew Wakefield published a study. It turned out that the study was bogus. It was based on a dozen kids that were brought to him. It was not a random sampling. He had a financial conflict with a potential measles-only vaccine that would have been a great alternative to the MMR. The paper was retracted. Dr. Andrew Wakefield has lost his medical license. So we have a potentially major problem here. And this is what happens when you put what is it, the fox in charge of the hen house, something like that. This is potentially disastrous. And it seems as though there is essentially no bottom to what is going to be considered. With some of this stuff, I would love it if Trump would just go, yeah, we're not going to do that. That we're not going to do. Well, I wrote a book after a long journey and a ton of work. I am really thrilled with how it turned out, and I hope you'll read it. The book is called The Echo Machine. And in a nutshell, it looks at how American politics got so broken, who has already figured out solutions, and how we can try to fix it and stop the terror of Trump for the next 4 years. With Trump winning this election, the Echo Machine couldn't be more relevant, not only a warning about how we got here, but also about what might be coming and how to prevent the worst outcomes. We've got to stay engaged. We need a plan, and that's what the book is about. There's a belief out there that unless you have corporate media behind you, you can't have a successful political book launch, that it's not possible. I think we can prove that wrong. Order The Echo Machine today at davidpakman.com/echo on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Audible, Kindle, anywhere that books, ebooks, and audiobooks are sold. You can also call any local bookstore and say, please order me The Echo Machine by David Pakman. Wherever you get the book, you'll get the free pre-order perks, including the signed book plate. Head to davidpakman.com/free book stuff after ordering.